Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy.
And you go ahead.
And today's show subject matters are Randy Hilliard, The View, and AOC looking for conservatives, InfoWars, NASA and Elon Musk, and then Biden funneling money to Ukraine until the day he gets out of office.
Yes. So we have some topics that are focused on Canada. If we have any of our viewers from the Nat and the Guy Spanish, thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to this one if you like content in English or if you're interested in things happening that we both talk about, not just me rambling on.
Well, yesterday I had a hell of a time. I tried to do my first live by myself, and man, it went extremely wrong.
Yes.
I keep accidentally cursing. I think I just did again. So.
And I mean, mine also wasn't so great. I do a live in Spanish. If there are any Spanish speaking viewers, subscribers as well, you can wait for those during the evening time. Still don't have a set schedule. We'll post it once we actually do have a set schedule. Microphone is weird.
Okay, let's get into the news here.
Their microphones. Yes. So the first subject is Randy Hilliard. So if you don't know who that is, this is in Canada. So all the way back in 2022, during the Canadian 2022 convoy protests, Randy Hilliard was a big part of it. And as we all know, the ones who went through it, if you saw it in, the media or Twitter or wherever, you saw that there was quite a bit of persecution, really, of anybody that was protesting against the tyrannical mandates that the Canadian government was imposing upon its people. There were a lot of people that were not okay with, for example, the Emergency Act being called on all of these protesters. And these were just people that were trying to live their lives because a lot of them have jobs, for example, where they had to go across the border and they didn't really want to get a jab, for lack of a better term. And so this MP, is a member of parliament at the time, wanted to do something about it and speak up during the convoy protests. And so he did. And because of that, he got arrested and charged with a litany of different counts. So I'll pull it up on the screen now because 2 years later now, finally. Oh, hold on. Where are you?
Oh, look at me.
Let me put you back in there.
Well, I will say a few things about the convoy protest. On our other channel, Nat and the Guy in Spanish, the original videos are in English, and the first video we ever did was the convoy protest in BC. It actually went all along Canada. It wasn't just in Ottawa. And that's what kind of sparked this whole channel.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And we, at first, were really scared to speak out. But eventually and especially because of the convoy protests, we said, well, we have to do something about this. And so we did. You and I both decided not to get the thing, even though you especially were more pressured by having to have a job, having to have a.
I ended up getting four jobs because two and three of my jobs were threatening to fire me. So one of my jobs was my buddy, and I knew he wasn't going to fire me. We had a frank conversation that he wouldn't. Yeah. But every other job that was a corporate job or through just a regular job that wasn't my friend, every single one threatened to fire me. Yep. And I wasn't going to do it.
Exactly. And I honestly kind of just stopped working because I didn't want to deal with it. I had some savings and eventually did go back into working into the film industry. And surprisingly, I think they needed to get things going. So they didn't really do much, but we had to get tested almost every week working for the film industry in Vancouver. And then I did.
Yeah, that was actually really surprising because the Teamsters 155 Film Union in Vancouver really stood up for their union members, and they didn't make them get jabs. We had to go get tested every week, but it was really good on them that they didn't force mandates upon their union members, which I know a lot of people that weren't part of unions, and it was definitely forced on them, and a lot of people that were part of unions, and it was just it broke my heart to see unions not standing up for their members.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the members did, were still with the idea that it was a good idea to do it.
Yeah, well, it's your free choice. But they never
actually went and, exactly, they never actually went and forced it like the rest of Canada, the Canadian government. And so, okay, let's just see quickly what happened. So it says Randy Hilliard's convoy protest charges stayed. Stayed means that it doesn't mean they've been completely removed, but it means that they've been essentially put on the back burner. Nobody cares about it, and the court is not going to continue prosecuting you or persecuting you. But it doesn't mean yet that they've been completely canceled. And I'll let you know why I know this in a little bit. But it says all charges faced by former Member of Parliament Randy Hillier in relation to the 2022 convoy protests in Ottawa have been stayed because of court delays. And this is funny because, again, this was 2 years ago, and the courts are still processing a lot of COVID tickets, a lot of pandemic arrests and charges for people that were protesting. And it says the former independent representative for Lanark, etc., had been facing 9 charges, including 2 counts of mischief, 3 counts of counseling to commit an indictable offense, 3 counts of obstructing a peace officer, and 1 of assaulting a peace officer. And it says after that, a decision dated yesterday, so November 14th, the justice granted him a stay of proceedings based on the argument that his right to be tried within a reasonable time had been violated. And this has also been happening to a lot of other people that have tickets. And I personally know this because I got a ticket for trying to get it back into the country and not being jabbed. And this, I mean, I had to go into essentially get a law degree almost online because I had to self-represent with in front of the court in Vancouver and kind of state my case. And there was this whole little group of people that were also faced with tickets, and we all kind of were helping each other and knowing like what the legal jargon.
Yeah, they were really putting pressure on you by they were made you show up in court, and then they would stay it, have you show up again. They were just dragging it on and on and on. If you had to pay for a lawyer, which you didn't, you spent hours and hours and hours educating yourself.
Yeah.
But the punishment was the crime in the end, because they ended up dropping all these, and they figured they would wait people out. Most people would just pay the tickets.
Yeah, and well, I mean, they haven't dropped every single one of them. There are still people that haven't had their charges dropped. Mine were not dropped. Mine were stayed, which means we're put on a back burner, but haven't heard anything since. This was about a year and a half ago that they decided to kind of let it go. But even during the lockdowns, I came back and I had to get tested every day and send those tests out. And then they would check on the app if I was still at home because I was supposed to be quarantining because I was so dangerous. And it was just an insane time. And it's crazy that we're still reminded over and over again that this, number one, this happened. Most people have forgotten about it. And number two, the lengths to which they went. I mean, this was a member of parliament. He's now kind of buddy with Maxime Bernier and the PPC, the People's Party of Canada. But the fact that he had to go through all this was just crazy.
Well, I will say I've been watching a lot of Dave Smith, and he is somebody that actually keeps up on the data that keeps coming out. And a lot of people want to put all this COVID data to the side because the longer that goes on and the more data that comes out when you're comparing people that use masks compared to districts that didn't use masks, or you could travel, or there was mandates for distancing, all this is in favor of against the government. Mm-hmm. And so people just that were in favor of all these COVID mandates just can't win debates anymore. And it's a little bit insane what went on back then, and we should never forget what actually happened. And people that stood up during that time, I have a great deal of respect for them.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of includes us as well, kind of resisting and going to the protests. And I mean, people forget how hard it was to even speak out about it.
It wasn't about having any major resistance. It was just about each individual resisting in their own little way. And then that built up enough to put a pressure on the government. And I will say this, I do watch a lot of Robert Barnes, and we said yesterday, we hope you get better, Robert. Yes. But what I was going to say is he covers a lot of COVID cases because he's a constitutional lawyer. So he sets the precedent for these cases so other lawyers can come on through. And what happened in Canada was much different than the States. A lot of people brought these cases immediately, and then they were very quickly knocked down. So nobody was able to set the precedents. What happened in the States is very similar. A lot of the cases were knocked down, but not everybody brought their cases right away. So cases are just starting to trickle through in the United States, and all the data is on the side against the government now. So there's good data, and these people should win their cases within the States, which will set the precedent and will set the example worldwide.
And what's crazy is, like, as he says here, all the way back when talking about what he was charged with, it was 9 criminal charges by the Ottawa police, and the Ottawa Crown sought a 3.5-year sentence to punish him for his peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience to the unconstitutional orders and mandates issued in February 2022. And
So,
go ahead.
yeah, in Canada, all of your rights were kind of shucked to the side under special provisions they had within Canadian law that they were able to take your rights away. Where in the States, the Constitution, even though they took it away, now a lot of legal cases are going through. So you're seeing these constitutional protections that are in the States really need to be enshrined in Canada, and they can't have little pieces of legislation where they're able to take away your constitutional rights in Canada. It's kind of ridiculous.
And it's funny now also. I mean, I was seeing and looking at what's happening in Canada right now because I've been a little bit disconnected since we've been here. And the number one issue right now, other than this one, is that Taylor Swift is visiting Toronto, and it's insane. It's a helpful way to see where Canada and the Canadian public are in their insanity. Because, for example, let's just look at this tweet.
So she did she did a land acknowledgement at her concert.
But what I was going to say before that is she got a motorcade. And like it was a bigger motorcade than other presidents and prime ministers have gotten when they go to Canada. And I mean, just they shut down traffic. You can see the traffic on the other side of the bridge. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a motorcycle, all just kind of carrying the importance that is Taylor Swift. So I thought that was crazy. And then, yes, exactly. She bent the knee. I mean, I'm sure she was happy to. She did endorse Kamala, but she did a land acknowledgement, which was this thing, if you don't know what it is, I'm sure it's going to come to Mexico soon because we also have indigenous peoples and etc. But the First Nations peoples have now been allowed to demand that their territories and the places where their lands are be acknowledged before any kind of public event, be it at a university, be it a concert, be it whatever it is. You have to do this performative self-victimization thing where you acknowledge that you are on stolen land, and they have to read this little passage. I don't really remember the one in Vancouver, but I used to know it by heart because it happened at every single event and every single concert.
I don't know. This isn't anything new. You're kind of reading it like it's a little bit new, but for me, this has been going on.
But it might be new for people from Mexico, for example. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, this has been going on.
Some Americans.
This has been going on for a decade in Canada, and when it first came up, it was like, yeah, okay, I can understand. Maybe it's stolen land. We'll say it. But there was always an ulterior motive, and we're seeing what that ulterior motive is because Canada was tip of the spear for all this wokeism. They always had a plan legislatively where they were going to go. So they were started with land acknowledgements, and now they're taking big swaths of Canada away from private owners, and they're giving it back to, they're saying, Indigenous people. Mm-hmm. So if you own a house on that land, you no longer have the rights to that land. Also, what's going on is, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, what I was going to say is the way they do it is like we acknowledge that we are performing today at Rogers Centre, which is like a stadium located on Treaty 13 lands, traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional home of many other nations, including and then you have to utter these names as if you are able to, because if not, it's disrespectful, very much like the Kamala debacle. And when you did it wrong, for example, at university, you used to kind of be seen as a racist just because you said the name of the tribe or the land or the nation wrong.
Well, you're seeing this come into Mexico now, and they're doing it through Indigenous people, but everybody here, it's more of a homogenous population. So it's going to be crazy if people actually pick this up. It did give me a lot of hope with these recent U.S. elections that the Hispanic population was not having all this woke crap. So I don't think there's a good chance it's not going to pick up here. And I would really think that the party that's in power now, Morena, may take a couple tips from the U.S. election and may not go hard with a lot of these woke policies. They may try to have them come in sneakily, which I think is a lot more deceptive, and they might be a lot more successful at that. I actually hope they're completely above board with it, so people are going to be able to stand up and really say no.
I mean, you might think they might try to do it deceptively, but I honestly think that after we saw when Claudia Sheinbaum got elected and after during her inauguration, she had this whole indigenous ceremony that was kind of apart from the traditional actual, what do you call it? It's not election ceremony, like when they come in.
Inauguration ceremony.
Completely apart from the inauguration ceremony. She went to that after she had been actually inaugurated, and it was full of indigenous women. And there has been a pretty strong push to make the indigenous issue in Mexico even bigger.
No, I mean they're gonna. I believe they'll push little ceremonies like that. And at that time, Trump hadn't won, and they didn't know that there was this huge conservative movement Now that they're gonna see that Mexico has natural conservative tendencies, they're not gonna want to push a lot of these transgendered things out so publicly.
No, but I'm talking about the indigenous stuff specifically.
I'm talking about wokeism as a whole.
I know, but the way that they're going to do it, because they've learned about what happened with Trump, now they will be able to implement it in a way where it might actually stick in a way that it'll stick for the people of Latin America. I'm guessing they're trying to go after not just Mexico, but a lot of Latin America, and making the indigenous issue the new racism, colonialism, etc.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. So we're not disagreeing here.
Well, you're saying it won't be able to be implemented.
No, I'm saying they're going to do it.
I'm saying they're going to do it even more.
No, I'm saying they're going to do it sneakily by picking very specific issues, like they're going to divide the population through indigenism, not transgenderism. One thing is more likely to work.
They started with racism in the U.S.
I'm talking about Mexico here.
I know, but what I'm saying is the way they're going to do it in Mexico is also through racism, but in the sense of the indigenous population.
Yes, but the way it was knocked down in the States and in Canada was these extremely radicalized issues such as transgendered and race and all these other things were added on top. So when the tip of the spear started to collapse, everything else collapsed on the base. Here, they're just going to build the base. They may not take the most radicalist issues, because dividing people through indigenous rights, I don't think is as radical as trying to divide people through
no, but it might make the division to actually stick, and then they bring in everything else they're trying to bring
I don't think they're going to bring in other stuff here.
Yeah, they already started to.
No, they tried to, but then now that Trump won, I think she's going to wake up. And she's not going to.
The thing is, she's going to try to bring it through feminism, and I'm doing a series of videos explaining how and why.
And this is what I'm saying. She's going to do it through feminism and indigenism, because those two things have large bases and large groups that it appeals to. She's not going to appeal to the 1%.
But through feminism, she can still say trans women are women, and that's where it's going to start.
They're not going to do that.
Yes.
We'll see. Yes. Maybe they'll do it. They started trying to do it. I really think this election in the United States is going to have a huge impact worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's our dog girl, by the way.
Guard dog. So moving on now to other ridiculous women. So The View and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or maybe as she prefers me to say it, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because she always loves to put on her little fake I speak Spanish accent when she says her name. So apparently they are now might be realizing that they're missing something, and might help them understand why they lost so badly and why they couldn't see what was happening. And now the hosts of The View, or the harpies of The View, and AOC are starting to kind of look for conservatives, or at least try to understand why so many people that they thought would vote for them actually voted for Orange Man bad.
Well, how often do you watch The View?
Never. I mean, I watch the clips.
I watch the clips all the time,
but I don't watch The View itself,
because they're not just.
They're sad.
They're not just regular leftists. They're leftists that really are in such an echo chamber. When they make a point, it sounds so ludicrous. There's some leftist debaters that can actually make points, but they just are like Trump bad, Trump Hitler, and yeah.
And I mean, AOC, in her being completely flabbergasted as to why they lost, actually made some posts on her, I believe it was Instagram and also X, asking people and saying, like, if you voted for Trump but also down ballot voted for Democrats, or if you voted for Trump but you used to be a Democrat, or just if you're conservative, please tell me what kind of things you watch, because I'm really interested to know why so many people decided to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she also got discovered for taking the pronouns away from her X profile and her X bio. And it might be because now she's realizing that, exactly as you said, the Hispanic voters aren't really on board with the whole she, they, them,
Well,
he, him.
I think she's starting to wake up because a lot of people always quote AOC as being the future of the Democratic Party, but she's way too radical if she's to take the main role. If she's able to moderate herself and become a moderate, then she may be able to actually get a presidential nomination or a vice presidential nomination. So it'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
You continue. I'm going to get the dog real quick.
Get her where? Go away. There you go. Sorry.
Okay, now she's cowering under the table. Okay.
And I mean, moving on to also The View and why they keep wondering why. What are you doing?
Continue.
To The View and why they are kind of now trying to find. That's our guard dog.
This is our guard dog. Let's switch the camera so everybody can see. Yes. Oh.
And there's the guard dog.
There's the guard dog.
The terrified guard
hello. Okay, we're gonna put you
her
down.
down because she has back issues. She is just that fearful. AOC, yes, looking for conservative voters and taking.
Oh no, let me finish on this AOC thing really quick. So with AOC, I think she's really smartening up. If she's takes her pronouns out of her bios, she's able to reconduct herself as a moderate. But she's doing the smartest thing, which is she wants to know where these people are getting their news. She wants to get debate points. Right now, she's in an echo chamber. She doesn't care what the right says. She just has her talking points and she sticks to those because that's how the Democratic Party works. That if the future of the Democratic Party wants to evolve and survive, they're going to really need to start listening to the right and what their talking points are. So they're going to have counter talking points. So I'm thinking,
not just the right, to people that moved away from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but she's
Those
asking specifically for like right wing news, and she wants she wants the right wing talking points so she can try to counter.
It's also because her voters started watching all of these right wing. Ultra MAGA shows like Joe Rogan, who also used to be a Democrat, and now they're trying to figure out, how can we do that? But I think they're too far down the rabbit hole with the Obamas, with the Bill Gateses, with the Hillary Clintons, that they can't really dig themselves out in the next 4 years. They're going to need at least 10 years.
No, like because we were on
by then she'll be too old.
I mean, we were on the ground from the beginning with MAGAs. You've seen how it evolved. The fact that Trump had the last election stolen from him or he didn't win allowed him to build a extremely successful media structure. It really only took him 5 years to build it, but it was that extra 5 years he had that really had alternative media really overcome mainstream media. If he would have won the last election, it was mainstream media, alternative media had pretty much equal power.
But it was also because the mainstream media got so insane and got such a Trump derangement syndrome tinge to it that a lot of people started seeing through it and seeking out this new alternative media. So it's also kind of thanks to the mainstream media that a lot of shows and people came up in the alternative media space.
Yeah, well, with leftist media, you're really seeing they had a drop, but now the people that are sticking to the line are really trying to evolve the party. I would say more sticking to the line are getting a lot of viewership back, such as Minus Touch or Pac-Man.
Sure. But somebody and a group that are not getting viewers back are The View, because they're, according to New York Post, ABC brass scrambled to bring in pro-Trump voices to The View and other shows because they're in panic mode. And, I mean, they are, because they now need somebody to balance out the, as it says here, rabid anti-Trump rhetoric spewed by the harpies of The View, as well as on other shows. And so now Disney, who, by the way, also we talked about Rachel Zegler, the Snow White actress, that essentially asked for bad or harm to be done to Trump supporters and to Trump himself, had to come groveling back today and issue an apology.
Oh, she did. I didn't know
on
that.
her Instagram, saying that we shouldn't let politics divide us. but it's more like Disney told her she shouldn't let. I mean, she cannot post that if she wants any kind of audience now.
Okay, but I
Because
would.
they're seeing what's happening. Go.
So how many girls are on The View? There's 5 of them, correct?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think one of them, when I watch it, it seems like she's conservative, but she's scared to voice her opinion. But she very often will slightly try to defend Trump or defend at least traditional right-wing stuff. It's the good-looking girl on there. There's only one good-looking girl on there.
Yeah, I don't even know who it is. I mean, I know
But I don't know if she is
insane.
conservative or not, because when I watch her, she seemed to be.
Because she's a new addition. She wasn't there for a while, and now she popped up all of a
And
sudden.
as the
in
election
all
time
these
came up,
clips.
she seemed to be anti-Trump. But when the election was further away, it seemed like she was the token person trying to defend Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure if she was supposed to be the conservative, and then she just broke like a piñata because the other 4 were against her. Or, but if they give her somebody else and they pair her with a conservative, it could work.
I mean, here it says co-hosted by ultra liberals, which we know Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, and Sarah
Those
Hines,
are the 3 worst.
Haynes, yeah, as well as Republican Trump bashers. So they're anti-Trumpers.
Oh, okay,
Anna
so-
Navarro and Alyssa Farah Griffin.
So those 2 are supposed
Apparently
to.
there's 6 of them.
They're the rhinos, I guess you would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of like big mainstream news networks would only have on for the longest time. It's the rhinos and the people that, because they still needed to have that anti-Trump.
The truth
view.
is, it's not going to be hard to find somebody. They don't want to find somebody because there's somebody named Candace Owens who would be glad to do it for a few $1 million
she'd be
as long as
glad.
she can continue to do her own show, and Disney wouldn't own that. So it would have to be a specialty contract, and she would absolutely annihilate all 4 girls all at once.
Yeah, but Disney
and they
would
can't
never,
have that.
Disney would never have her because she's an anti-Semite.
Well, they're not going to have a strong, independent MAGA woman on there.
No. But it is funny that they did have a strong, independent black man in the face of Mayor Adams from New York. Put your headphone in.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm going to play you what he said to the View hosts. I believe it was either today or yesterday. But essentially telling them that Trump is not Hitler and it is not the end of democracy, and stop shrieking about it. So let's hear him.
I say let's dismantle the hate. And what you saw in this city, in this election, where you saw a shift and the city becoming, the state becoming redder, is
And again, for copyright reasons, after this, he goes on to say that the fact that everybody was calling Trump and the MAGA people fascists and Hitler supporters and etc. wasn't actually what the people he was talking to on the streets were saying. They were saying, hey, I can't afford groceries. Hey, what about the economy? Hey, what about women? So he goes on to, because I don't want to get copyright stricken, so I'll just narrate it now. You can go watch the clip. It's on Charlie Kirk's
Well, I'm going to say that.
X. He essentially gives it to them, and they just sit there silently because Adams used to be, this golden Democrat boy that was going to help them out with their whole immigration thing in New York, and with the hotels and with bringing in the immigrants and being a sanctuary state. And now actually New York is backing away from being a sanctuary state for illegal
Look,
immigrants.
New York and California, if I were to tell you if it's Democratic or Republican, most people are going to say Democrat, you would say? And
Not anymore,
no.
but
Well, they still went Democrat, correct, in the
Kind
election? I would completely disagree. If you look at the election laws, it's illegal to ask for voter ID in California, Washington, Oregon. A lot of these states, actually almost every single state that Democrats are winning, it's illegal to ask for voter ID. Therefore, illegals can go and vote. Anybody can go and vote. And
yes,
it's
well,
almost
the
impossible.
states where the Democrats won were actually states where voter ID was not required.
So if the Republicans are able to reform voter ID law in all 50 states, it's going to be extremely hard for even Democrats to win in California and New York.
But what I was saying is Mayor Adams seems to have seen at least half the light and is now pausing a lot of the immigration sanctuary city programs that were happening, including, free food, free housing, free etc., and trying to clean up the city. And now he's also acknowledging that the fact that maybe they were calling Trump Hitler and all his supporters fascists was a little bit over the line, and that might be also why a lot of people decided to say, hey, I actually don't really see it this way and care about this. I care about not being able to afford food or gas or be able to pay for my family for much longer. And that's why they voted for him.
Well, I don't know if I'll give it Trump, I don't know.
That's what he said.
I don't know if
to
I,
them.
yeah, but I don't know if I would give credit to Eric Adams for stopping all those programs. I would actually give credit to Trump. Eric Adams knows.
Well, yes, of course.
Eric Adams knows Trump's coming now.
But remember when he also tried to do something earlier? He was trying to this was a few months ago. He tried to do something about it, and then he started to get investigated about all these Turkish flights. We talked about it.
Eric Adams was originally the most conservative of all the liberals. That's why they ran him in New York, because they knew New York was starting to turn conservative. Mm-hmm. And that's how he got in. After he got in, he went right back to his liberal policies. And that was a good example of why people shouldn't have voted for Kamala Harris, because she was doing an Eric Adams, trying to pretend like she's a fake conservative, but she's still liberal. And you knew as soon as she got into office, she was going to go extremely liberal again, just like Joe Biden did. This was the Democrats' playbook over the last 4 years in every single election.
Yes. And speaking of the playbook, well, there's more Alex Jones news, because he never stops being in the news, and he never stops being news either. So yesterday, and I believe we also talked about it, maybe, there was this story that his network Infowars, which was taken away from him after the Sandy Hook case, that he lost, and he owes them, how much is it, $1 billion?
$1 billion.
$1 billion.
It was a judgment of $1 billion, which it was an outrageous judgment, and it was done by a liberal court in order to to scare other people.
So yes, after that, he was also instructed to shut down Infowars, and apparently he was going to have to sell it or just stop doing it. He had to get off the airwaves because they now owned kind of him making a show. But it came out yesterday that The Onion, which is this liberal, it's kind of like the Babylon Bee, but it's this liberal joke news website where they put ridiculous headlines on and think it's funny. They supposedly had bought it, but...
Wait, what happened?
The Onion...
Sometimes you start going and then I forget what your original point was.
I'm explaining what happened to the Infowars and Alex Jones.
The Onion bought Infowars is what you're saying?
No. Yesterday, news came out that the Onion had bought Infowars, but in the evening, late evening, Alex Jones came out to say, and this morning, to say that that was not true. The Onion was saying that they had actually bought Infowars during an auction for the site, but Alex Jones came out and said, no, that is not true. The Onion never bought and never was granted the rights to buy Infowars.
Well, hold on. I think we need to make it clear for the audience here.
Well, do you want to watch him saying it then?
Well, no, but I just want to say it wasn't Alex. You don't believe it because Alex Jones said it, because a lot of people aren't going to believe Alex Jones. It was actually backed up by a judge, and the judge that was in charge of this said it never sold. So if you think this is some debate between the Onion and Alex Jones, it's not. Infowars is currently not sold because a judge came down and said it was an invalid sale. Sorry, I just wanted to.
And
I just wanted to make it concise for the audience.
Sure. And the this nugget of truth was also put into the articles writing about the Onion having bought it and then kind of retracting it all the way at the bottom, as they always do, and saying no, they didn't actually buy it. It was not a legal auction. Should we watch? What he said? Okay.
Anytime we can watch Alex Jones is a good time.
Sure. Let me just double check that the volume is fine. Because he screams, so we don't want him screaming in the audience's ears.
For years, I've been the phone until.
Oh, hold on. Now I can't find it.
Okay, Infowars, because Alex Jones did have other buyers for this that were friendly to him, and what was suspected was these alternative buyers were going to buy it and leave Alex Jones on the air, and this would have completely backfired on liberals. So liberals tried to have this illegal auction that had no actual bidders, and it wasn't going to go to the highest bidder. So this is what makes it such an interesting story.
Yes, so here it is.
All right, I shot a special report on this that I posted to Real Alex Jones about 2 hours ago. And then I was actually reading the transcripts from the multi-hour emergency court hearing today in federal bankruptcy court in Houston. And then I called all the lawyers and talked to them, and they had a total consensus. They've never seen anything like it. The words were exactly This was a private secret sale, basically illegal is the word that's used. Not basically, it's crime. I mean, bankruptcy crime. I mean, on its face. Disguised as an auction that wasn't an auction. And the people didn't even pay real money. They paid some weird fiat thing that wasn't even agreed to by the judge's order. And then they had the corporate media say that the Onion bought InfoWars. And then the judge kept saying to the trustee that did this, I didn't give you the authority to do this. You were supposed to come to me about an auction. This isn't even an auction. And then it's just all over the news that they just bought it and they won the bid and they did that. But then they quote the U.S. trustee going, well, it's not the highest bid, but it's the best bid. These people just think they can do anything. It's crazy. So nobody sees how the federal judge, who's known for being straight-laced and not corrupt at all, Judge Chris Lopez, cannot end.
And I mean, we know Alex Jones loves to ramble, so he just keeps going off on the judge.
I like to hear Alex Jones, but if you want to cut the man off, you go ahead and cut the man off.
Yes, I do. But yeah, so essentially you can't trust anything you ever hear coming out of the mainstream media, especially when it comes to Alex Jones, because all they do is lie.
I don't think this was just a matter of mainstream media. I think this was extremely slimy, and I think it goes to the fact that they think ownership is 9/10 of the law. So they wanted to convince everybody that Alex Jones didn't own it and that they did. They even had Alex Jones convinced late last night that they had owned it. Alex Jones said, I'm going to stay in this building until a court order comes because there's no way I'm leaving, even if it is sold. And he believed it was sold. Mm-hmm. I mean, they convinced the man that actually owns the company still that it was sold. So if they convinced him, this was reported on mass scale. But basically, it almost worked. They almost made the whole world believe that they owned it, and everybody knows ownership's 9/10 of the law. Man, I'm really glad Alex still owns it, at least for now.
And I mean, we can also tell this is another kind of fallback from the Trump winning the election. They're terrified of Alex Jones actually having a platform now that Trump is back in, and they're terrified of what he might say and uncover, because of course I'm guessing Elon and all of them will have at least half of his back, and he's already trying to start a new network and start a new thing. So,
well, I will say this: Alex Jones is the trailblazer of the right-wing media movement. Mm-hmm. He's the one that set the blueprint, because when they went after Alex Jones, they tried to cancel him in every single way, and they always set the precedent with Alex Jones. So if you wanted to know what was coming next, you just looked at Alex Jones, and he kept pivoting. So he started selling supplements. He started having MyPillow ads. He couldn't get any regular advertisers, so his business model had to keep changing. And what you've seen was the rest of the right-wing media start to learn from this, and then they started pivoting to Alex Jones' model. Even though if it wasn't exactly the same, they made sure they had their individual products like coffees and things like this and their own individual websites, so they weren't privy to just YouTube cancellation or at the time Twitter cancellation.
Yeah, and I mean...
So thank you to Alex Jones.
Yes, thank you to Alex Jones. Even though your voice hurts my ears sometimes.
My voice?
No, his voice.
But my voice too, earlier today.
But yes, so we are, and again, in this same vein of Alex Jones and the truth coming out, another, kind of committee member.
I can't hear you very well. I got an earphone in.
Another committee member of it's not my fault you're deaf. Another committee member of the new Trump, MAGA mega team, Elon Musk, is now coming out and calling on NASA to clean house.
Oh, I actually think it's opposite. I think NASA's calling on Elon Musk, isn't it?
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah. So.
Well, I think Elon Musk has NASA in his sights, and I think a lot of this, him coming into government, was going to focus on NASA anyway. But it's really good to hear NASA employees begging for Elon Musk to come in, because that's insiders kind of outing the level of corruption within NASA.
But I also think, and if you didn't see them, there were some committee hearings on aliens, or I don't even know what they call them now. But a lot of information seemed to be circulating about those committee hearings on social media. And maybe some tampering with evidence and trying to obscure things that should have been let out to the public. And I mean, those hearings still have ways to go. But it's interesting now that NASA is actually begging Elon Musk to clean house, and saying that they spent too much money on DEI. But I mean, they may also be spending a lot of money on other things that they want to use this to distract away from now that he's coming in full force.
Look, let's just be completely honest about this. At this point, SpaceX is the new NASA. And I almost expect SpaceX to kind of take over NASA and put the United States, basically making America great again when it comes to space travel. Because right now, if you ever do any research into space travel, the Chinese are starting to take leaps and bounds ahead, and they're going to catch up to SpaceX pretty soon. So it's very important that SpaceX is able to have a lot of the regulations taken off of them, so they can not only compete with China, but they'll be able to surpass them.
And I mean, this is also kind of indictment of what keeps happening with DEI and the main issue. Because it's crazy once you look at the numbers of the ways they were spending money and the things they were spending money on.
$500 for a hammer. Like,
yeah, spending from 2020 to 2024 showed NASA awarded grants to universities, for example, and consulting firms to support environmental justice in space and initiatives that embrace greater diversity and inclusive practices. And LMI Consulting received over $2 million in 2023 for NASA to embark on a venture to incorporate and deeply ingrain diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility in the culture and business.
They are basically using NASA to funnel money to other countries, and not even their space programs, but just these crazy causes. And it's very important. It's very important that the general public wake up and realize we are in a space race with China, with Russia, and competition is good. But this money they're just giving away and they're not doing their jobs at NASA, that needs to stop. Elon Musk needs to come in there, take it over, and make America great again. It's true.
Yes.
I mean, we can laugh about it all we want, but
no, just the way you said it, like you're still campaigning.
But I was never campaigning.
I know, because we're not from there, even though we support it. And then finally, also speaking about, spending and funneling money and millions to places and things that are not really worthwhile, Blinken says Biden will funnel as much money as possible to Ukraine before Trump takes over. Might be because that's essentially his piggy bank and where he stores all his money. But he said we've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine.
And this is crazy. I remember when the Ukraine war first broke out, I was on it every day for the first 2 years. I would watch hours and hours and hours a day, and it was obvious that the Ukraine, the United States, and Europe didn't have a shot at this war, and if they did want it, they were going to have to go directly after Russia, which would cause a world war. It was always best to negotiate. I'm really glad to see Trump in office because he's going to put an end to this nonsense. It's just a damn shame that they're going to continue to fund billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine so they can line their own pockets before they're out of office. This is going to be their last big payday because with Trump coming in, owning the House, owning the Senate, and owning the presidency and focusing on corruption specifically, it's going to be really hard to funnel money, especially when you start ending wars around the world.
And it's also funny that he said it at NATO headquarters, which for some reason they're still trying to make that happen. It's like, stop trying to make NATO happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And especially now that Trump's coming in, I'm thinking at least the Democrats are trying to keep those strengthened ties with NATO and the idea that it's still a good idea to have it in the first place.
Europe was looking to start a war. Europe was looking to start a war with Russia, and I'm just glad it looks like it's not going to happen now. Now, I will say this. Continue with the talk here. Let me set this little lady straight. Come on. Yes, good girl.
It's because everybody arrives home at this time, so all the neighboring dogs bark, and she has to respond.
Okay, I will say this. I know very often I sound very pro-Trump and stuff like this. I do like on his first term that he didn't start a bunch of wars and things like that. But I will say this. He may start wars, and if he does start wars, the most likely scenarios where he's going to go is going to be Iran, and they're going to spark that through the Israeli conflict, or China. But if he does get involved with the Chinese war, I think he wants to do it economically first before he goes into a hot war to really try to cripple them economically. there's a good chance he starts no wars, though, and that's the reason I would have voted for him if I could have, and I think a lot of people did. So I really hope he sticks with the policies of the first term and starts no major new conflicts. And if he does, I hope there's not the same level of corruption when it comes to wars like Afghanistan, where they're funneling billions of dollars over decades and decades.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think we're also seeing that a lot of geopolitical international politics, things are shifting and changing now that Trump has been elected, because we've also seen kind of a willingness forced on the side of Ukraine, but a willingness on both sides to kind of come to the table and be like, okay, yes, we're losing. Maybe it's not a good idea to keep going. Maybe let's just cut our losses and keep what little we still have and stop trying
it's not just a little, it's not a little they have. They have all of Western Ukraine, and ideologically, Western Ukraine does side with the West a lot more. So I would say with having Western Ukraine, that's the part they want. They shouldn't having Eastern Ukraine is only going to cause more and more trouble anyway, because ideologically, it was traditionally a lot of Russian-speaking people and people that agreed with Russia that lived in Eastern Ukraine. So having the border arbitrarily drawn there, if that's where it is, because if they don't get to a deal soon, Russia is going to continue to overrun that country.
Almost disconnected our whole stream. But I'm guessing that is about it. Those are all the stories we had. But I mean, I was going to say you were really like into this whole Ukraine-Russia
sorry, that's what I wanted to say.
Like,
at the point, they went to the negotiating table, and the original deal they tore up not too long into the war. Boris Johnson came over and said, no, they're not going to have the deal. Zelensky's right-hand man, they actually had signed the deal, came to the treaty, and they would have had a lot more land and everything else had they just signed the original deal. The original deal was extremely fair, and that was the thing. Both sides could have, shooken hands, and millions of people didn't have to die, and that would have really been the best thing overall. And the reason they came with such a good deal is because they did have so much backing from NATO and the U.S. at the time, so they were able to negotiate a good deal. Now, 2-3 years into this war, they're not going to get that same kind of deal. They may have to give up some major cities they wouldn't have had to before.
And I mean, once Biden is out of office, there still has been investigation as to what all his and Hunter's dealings were over there, and why were they so invested and involved in it, and why were the American taxpayers paying for, and not just the American ones, Canadian ones too, and taxpayers all over the world, why were they paying for their piggy bank?
And also, Ukraine was not part of NATO, and they're not part of the EU. So why was there 57 biolabs within the country?
Oh, yes.
That was crazy.
Yeah, the Victoria Nuland coming out and saying, oh, well, we have some biolab assets that we need to secure there, and that's urgent. And then it came out that the U.S. has biolabs all over the world, and especially I actually made a video of this a year ago when the clip came out of Nuland talking about it. It wasn't just there. It was in Sudan. They also had biolabs in Sudan while there was a civil war breaking out. And then the biolabs in Ukraine came out.
Well, it's just crazy. So many things are running through Ukraine. So many things are running through Ukraine. The Biden scandals.
Through war-torn countries, too. But yes, Ukraine specifically right now.
And we mentioned the pipeline yesterday, but I'll do it again because a lot of people keep forgetting the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that ran from Russia to Germany, which allowed the EU to have strong manufacturing, which they no longer have because they no longer have cheap energy, was blown up. And all the reports coming from the West is now that the Ukraine is the one that blown it up. If Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, that does not make them your ally. That makes them your enemy. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how they're putting 2 and 2 together and expecting the general public to buy it.
Well, and now Germany is also now talking with Trump and the fact that they might want to start getting natural gas back from.
Well, no, that was the thing. As soon as the Nord Stream 2 pipeline got blown up, all of Europe's energy needs supposedly were supposed to be supplied by LNG from the U.S., mm-hmm. which that just seems like, and then all the manufacturing from Europe was getting dumped into the U.S. at the same time because it was safer and cheaper because they had direct energy costs from the U.S. So you emptied their manufacturing and then forced them to buy oil from you. Like, it obviously wasn't Russia that blew up that pipeline. And I don't think it was Ukraine either. It was most likely the United States, but that's just speculation coming from me.
And I mean, usually you're more like the geopolitics, foreign policy guy, and I'm the
Yeah.
pop culture, social issues person. So, I mean, this is why you know so much more than I do about this. But I agree, there's a lot of shady stuff going on and around Ukraine that I think hopefully we'll know more about. But it might also be like the one last saving grace that the current Democratic Party might try to keep hidden and try to, scurry away with if they don't, try to maybe pardon Hunter or try to pardon Biden, even if he might not still need one, he might soon if he doesn't die before that.
I mean, the U.S. is so scared of Russia, but they actually make a natural ally, much how Mexico makes a natural ally with the United States, and that's why their people integrate so well into the United States, because they have shared Christian values. Russia is a primarily Christian country, and most of the values that are held by Russians are held by Americans and also held by Mexicans. So they would be a natural ally, but the United States is so scared that if the sanctions were taken off Russia and they actually trade with them fairly, that they would get too powerful. Mm-hmm. They would probably surpass the trading and natural resource might of the United States. And right now they're being held in check by those sanctions, I guess.
And I think also from the U.S., but I mean, NATO is the one that's running scared, I think, more because of that, because they're right on their doorstep.
Well, NATO's geopolitically, doesn't have any relevance these days, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people think they still do.
But they don't have a military to back it up. So technically it's the U.S. that's giving them any relevance they have. Yeah. And with Trump in office, they're going to have to renegotiate that NATO deal. Otherwise, they're not going to have a military.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that was all the topics for today. We're almost went an hour. So we'll let you rest from our screeching voices.
And if you do want to see the beautiful Natalia later today, she's going to be on Nat and the Guy in Spanish. So it's our other channel.
We're still kind of running tests on like individual lives. But yes, we will try to have one out today, even though it's Friday and most people won't watch it. But I won't say what time yet because we have a lot of things to set up.
Oh, and the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight's on. I have to watch that tonight.
Yes. Well, so yes, I won't have anybody watching me anyways.